Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very, very special guest for you, Sheena Franklin. Sheena is the founder and CEO of Kept Health. Welcome to the show, Sheena.
Hey Otto, what's happening? How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to talking with you, seeing what nuggets we are able to like glean from each other. It'll be fun.
Oh, I love it. Before we go into your personal story, if you can give the audience out there, if they haven't heard of Kept Health, who is Kept Health?
Yeah, so we are a impact health tech company, and our mission is to provide care for individuals who are suffering from chronic skin conditions and diseases, and we help them and the practitioners who treat them thrive. And we do that through our integrative and inclusive AI powered teledermatology platform, right? So these individuals are able to come onto our platform, they're able to have a dermatology visit directly on our platform, manage their care after the visit. And then on the back end, if you will, dermatologists are practicing on our platform and they're receiving point of care recommendations to help personalize the patient's experience.
Oh, wow. Can't wait to get into what led you into this business and industry.
Yeah, so it's a couple of things, right? So, I guess we say number one, I worked in healthcare policy for over 20 years here in DC on Capitol Hill, aka like a lobbyist person. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. And then I started to have my own experiences with finding a dermatologist, who was available. Because, sometimes it's very hard to get in for an appointment. And then once you're there, finding someone who's really skilled at treating skin of color but really understanding how to get to the root cause of what's causing the skin condition to better treat it. And then just from my professional experience, just looking at how technology was changing the future of healthcare, I just really felt like CATS could be on the forefront of virtual first care.
I love that. So the dermatologist, this was you already going to a dermatologist as an adult, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay.
I was an adult. I was an adult.
The reason I'm asking, I remember growing up, I grew up in DC, so I remember going, I think I was a teenager, and I guess it's common, for teenagers for the acne and all that. But, finding the right dermatologist and then getting prescriptions and everything else and following up, and then there would be side effects because
Mhm.
it wasn't mostly just cream, it was pills I would be taking too as a teenager. Um, God, I forgot the name of those pills, but I think it was something popular.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a challenge. It starts obviously a lot of people experience conditions when they're younger, but as we get older, you can experience different skin conditions for a number of reasons, right? So beyond just acne, psoriasis, eczema, you may have allergic reactions to some type of other drug that you're on. But also, what's overlooked is that our skin starts to show the first signs of something that's going on internally with our health, right? So it's not just cancer, it could be diabetes, it could be heart disease, it could be, PCOS, it could be a number of different diseases that first appear on the skin.
I see. Before we go into the business, if we can just rewind back, are you originally from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area?
I am not. I am not. So I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, where the majority of my family is from. So then from there, I went to school in Atlanta, and then I moved up here, like most people, to go to grad school and to work in the government or work in politics,
So you lived in Denver all the way up to college, right?
all the way to college. Yep.
Okay. How was it growing up in Denver? Like, what were you into as a child? Would you like doing in your free time?
Yeah. So interesting. So I guess like the formative years, like I was someone I love to explore, right? But I also love to read. Like even now, like I am a reader. Like I don't know if you ever heard of that Book It program where it was during the summers. If you read a certain number of books, you would get a free personal pan piece of the Pizza Hut.
I
Like I
remember.
was the queen of like book it. I was like a pizza for me, my cousins, my friends. Like that's how much I read. But then as I got older, I got more into dance. So I really like dancing. And then from there, I got into sports. And then I played basketball for the remainder of like my adolescent years and
The
through high.
basketball was what you think, maybe high school, middle school?
So I started playing in high school.
Okay.
So yeah, I did. I did.
Okay. What, those books, did you have any favorite reading, or like a series you would really devour, enjoy?
Yeah, like I'm really gonna date myself. So like most girls back then, it was like the Babysitters Club, right? Like that was like the book to read. But then in high school, my favorite books that I still enjoy and I have on my bookshelf today is A Brave New World. I don't know if you read that book, and another like science fiction type of book. So like I was really into that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
more into the fiction.
Yep,
Yeah.
fiction, like science fiction, stuff like that. Yeah, yeah.
The Babysitters Club is good. I have three young boys, and we've seen the series and the movie.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
That's classic. That's a classic book.
it is. I don't think they've read the book, but we definitely seen the show on Netflix.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've seen the show. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to go look it up afterwards.
Yeah, it's good. The reason I was asking, I remember growing up, I was into, I don't know if you ever read Goosebumps series.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I was really into that. And yeah, it was always different. You could choose the different, I think you'd be able to skip pages and
Yep,
depending what yeah,
yeah, you could choose the different endings for sure. And
yeah,
you like, yeah, you had to make sure you were honest because you couldn't like peek and then be like, yeah, I don't want to go that way.
yeah. And sometimes I would go back and be like, oh, I wonder what happened if I went this route. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So like basketball in high school, did you end up playing basketball in college? I know you said you moved to Atlanta for college.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the intention, but I didn't make it. So I ended up like joining the dance team and doing things like that. Yeah.
Where did you go to Atlanta for school?
So I went to Clark Atlanta University. Yeah.
Okay. What'd you major in?
English and political science.
Did you know going in you wanted that, or did you end up choosing that later on?
So I knew I wanted to do political science, right? Because my goal was to go to law school. And so then when we got to like advanced stats, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. So I'm gonna switch over to reading. And so then I just kind of switched it.
Okay,
So English became my major, and then political science was like my sub major, if you will.
I see. So you wanted to be an attorney when you were younger.
So I wanted not just to be an attorney, I wanted to be a sports agent for the NBA. That was my original goal. Yeah.
Oh,
So now when I see women doing it now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like they are so like lucky. I actually interned in college at a sports agency in Atlanta. It was like the worst experience ever. So that's what's like, yeah, I don't think that's for me.
oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, it happens. It
That,
wasn't my
yeah, it does happen. I'm curious, what made you choose back then, sports agency? Where did that interest come from?
like I really don't know. It was just like I knew people got drafted, right? And
Hmm.
there was always this person around who was helping make the deals. And they went to law school or they went to business school. I was like, oh, that would be perfect, right? Because like I
Hmm.
don't have to be in a courtroom all the time. So that's why I was
I
like,
see.
sports agent.
So
Yeah.
you finished Atlanta. Do you stay there for a bit after graduation, or do you immediately move up here?
So I immediately moved to DC. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you had grad school already lined up?
So I kind of sort of. So when I was in college, they had a program at GW for undergraduates, and so I had did that. So that was my plan. It was like when I got ready to apply to grad school, I would have like a leg up because I already took some of those courses. So then I just moved up to DC to work, and I worked for about 3 or 4 years, three or 4 years, and then I went on to grad school.
And in grad school, political science again, or something? Okay.
So yeah, it's
Okay.
legislative affairs with a concentration in corporate public affairs. So take that if you will. It's a mouthful.
So you shifted, and did you know then, as far as did you want to go into sort of politics or that route, or?
So what happened was in college, A friend of mine, he was a student at Morehouse, which we're all on the same little plot of land. And he ended up having a internship at the White House. So he came back and he was doing all these political clubs. So he came to me and one of our other girlfriends who was like, hey, you guys should get involved in this. And then that's how I was like, oh, I like this. So I was more on the business side of politics. So I wasn't like on the street, like canvassing, door knocking. I was like strategy, fundraising, communications. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like it. So then it just
Went
went
from
on from
there.
there.
So,
Yeah.
so you've always had a interest in business, whether with sports related or even just the political side of things, the business and operations, right?
Yeah. But back then I didn't realize that, right? Now I do. Now it's
Yeah.
come full circle. But back then I was all about, even still now, all about advocacy. Like that's like, I feel like my purpose is to speak for other people. So then it was just like merging them together. It was like a natural progression.
I'm curious, growing up, did you see, I don't know, whether in the household or through other friends or relatives, business or advocacy talked about or exposed to it?
So both. So I have a long history in my family of entrepreneurship. So my five or six times great grandfather on my mother's side, he's considered one of the first African American entrepreneurs in the country. So he founded a business during slavery, and then he purchased himself from freedom, and then he founded the first town by African American in America. So then it was like my grandmother, she was a psychotherapist, she had her own practice. Then my uncle, he had his own like small businesses that he would do in the community. And then my grandpa, like he was like the entrepreneur. Like I call him like the hustling cowboy because he's like from Oklahoma, right? Like he always wore like cowboy boots, but he always had like some type of business. So he had his accounting and tax service. That was his main business. But off season, he would do where he had a bingo, the string of bingo halls, right? So like that was my jam. Like all I wanted to do was work in the bingo hall, but I didn't get to work like the concession stand. Like I really wanted to do like the nacho thing, but I had to do like checking people in once again and talking to people. So it was still like a progression of what I wanted to see. And then by the time I graduated college, my mom had her own IT consulting company.
Wow. So you come from a long, long, very long line
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
entrepreneurs.
So you see the good and the bad, right?
Yeah,
It's not always the sexy stuff, right?
of
Like there's
course.
ebbs and flows. You shut down one business, you have to start something different. So yeah,
That's
interesting.
good. So did you grow up working in the bingo hall?
Yeah, yeah. So I was probably like 8 or 9. So like I said, I wanted to do the nacho machine. Like to this day, like I love nachos. But like my grandpa had me checking in people, giving
Okay.
them their bingo cards, and then sometimes I had to call out the numbers while all my cousins got to do like the fun stuff that I thought was the fun stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm just handing out cards. And you know those little the markers where you like do the dots? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
my job.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice. So you come up here, you attend GW for grad school, right?
Hmm.
You're done with that, and then you go head first into being a lobbyist?
So I did that the whole time. So
Oh,
it was, yeah. So I came up here, I worked for a party committee, then I worked for a nonprofit, and it was all like grassroots policy. And then, you just apply for different job, and you just get to that point. Yeah.
and you did that for about 20 years, you said, right?
Mhm. Over over 20 years, but if you include like my first job when I was 17, probably more than that. It would be.
How was that career for you? Well, what would you say are some highlights that you learned from doing
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. So obviously, I learned how to communicate. I learned how to spin, right?
Yeah,
Which comes
you
in
have to.
handy. Yeah, like learn how to spin, to read people, right? Like to really understand what someone may be asking when they're not asking it, or maybe not asking it because they don't necessarily possibly know that's what they want. How to negotiate, right? network, and there's just those hard advocacy type skills that you learn to do, like campaigns, talking to customers, like your go to get out the vote efforts that then translate to like go to market strategies, things like that. That's what I learned. A lot of that type of stuff.
And I guess 20 plus years into it, you weren't thinking, maybe let me start out my own lobbying firm. You decided to go a different route, or how
Yeah,
did
so
that?
I did,
Oh, you
right?
did. Okay.
Yeah, so my ultimate plan was if I was not going to be able to be in a position where I could be the head of government relations for like a dynamic international company, then I would do my own consulting. But I did that for a little bit. And then I was like, yeah, I'm not meant to be a consultant because I need you to do what I say, right?
Hmm.
Like that type of thing. And so then I was like, oh, I'll do something different. And I'll see what's out there and started exploring.
Okay. And that's when the idea of PEP came,
Yeah.
or okay.
So actually, it was during the time where there was a data breach with one of the large retailers. And I was attending the hearing, and I was like, well, why doesn't someone just like create a system where this data is housed like responsibly, right? And you keep the customer or the patient at the center, and then everything else works around it, and then you could go into different pathways and to the healthcare industry or retail health. It's really that simple, you guys. And then I just started exploring it. And then I was like, I don't want to do healthcare. So I'll choose skincare, which is still kind of in the beauty space. But
Hmm.
then once I started getting to the market and we started doing our MVP and I was able to speak to like thousands of women, it was like, okay, we got to switch over to healthcare. So I came back to healthcare.
Okay. And during this time, are you still also working full time as a lobbyist, or?
I am. I'm working
Okay.
full time at Walgreens. I don't know if I should probably tell them that, but like that's what I was doing. Yeah, I was still working full time. Yep.
Okay. So you're working full time, and then you're holding this, and you're here doing everything on your own, or did you have some help or a team helping you out with the side project at this time, or the side business?
So when it was like a side project, it was just myself, and I
Hmm.
would, hire different like contractors to figure out like product design, app building, things of that nature.
Nice. Okay. When did the time come, Sheena, where you decided to, okay, it's time to leave that W-2 paycheck and just go full force with the business?
Yeah, I wish I had something more inspiring, but I don't. So it was a time. It was a time when Walgreens was going through a big transition, right? We had just been bought out by Alliance Boots, and the opportunity presented itself to take a package and then exit the company. And so I was
Hmm.
like, well, it's no better time like the present. So that's actually what led me out the door.
Okay. And at that time, you were already how much time into this business?
So I started noodling different ideas back in 2015. So by the
Okay.
time I actually left, it was about 2018.
Okay. Okay. And you said it first started with health, but then you sort of went to the dermatology skincare route, and then you went back to health.
So I started in beauty, right?
Okay.
So like just, oh, I'll be in the beauty industry. It'll be a lot easier than healthcare because there's so many hurdles in
Hmm.
healthcare, but I could still walk that fine line because skincare is dermatology, right? Like it kind of is
Hmm.
that fine line. But then once I started talking to more women, it was like we need to switch over to healthcare so that we can better serve the women who are coming to us.
Now, were you thinking like of a skincare line, or what, or a specific product, or more of a service base?
Yeah, so it was still similar to what we do now, but now it's our profile. But women were able to come on, they were able to track all of their products, their skincare routines, their prescriptions, and then they were able to chat with an esthetician, right? Just for advice.
Hmm.
And then the advice um, time was being spent by trying to help people with healthcare related questions. But as you know, like you can't help someone if you're not a healthcare provider. So we had to start referring people out to different dermatologists.
I see. I see. Wow. So would you say from 2018, when you sort of went full time, let's call it, right, to now 5 years later, has the business shifted and evolved? And if so, how?
Yeah, it has shifted and evolved. So, and there was also periods of like downtime, right? So, at the start of the pandemic, things kind of went down for various different reasons, but a lot of has shifted in terms of incorporating AI. So, in the beginning, I was like, oh, I can incorporate AI much further down the road, right? But then once I started getting into healthcare and really learning about AI and the data analytics, I was like, okay, so let's move that up off the timeline and like reshift and focus the business.
That's great. So how has AI, I mean, nowadays with, I guess with the whole chat GPT, everyone,
Yeah.
I'm hearing everyone AI. How has AI helped the business?
So for us, I would say it hasn't helped us right now. And the reason
Okay.
why is because our goal is to build out an AI system that can recognize skin of color, right? And so there's not a system out there to date. So
Hmm.
we had to kind of like pull back again and say, how do we now build this system, right? We have to figure out how do we collect this data? How do we segment this data? We have to find dermatologists to label this data, right? And then we can pull in off the shelf data and then take it one step further, like putting on my CEO hat and saying, okay, 5 years from now, when there's 100 companies that are diverse, what's still going to set us apart? So then we had to come up with something else that we can add into our AI solution. So we're right now we're building all of that. We're building all of that out from scratch, essentially.
I love that. So I guess the plan is what I guess someone you snap a picture on your phone or computer and then the AI reads your skin color. Is that the goal there?
So no, but great. That's great.
Okay.
That's great. A lot of our competitors do that. So what we do is you come into our platform, you sign up for a visit, you scan your skin, right, and all that information, that intake form, information from your profile, all of that goes to the dermatologist, right? And so now our AI provides those point of care recommendations to the dermatologist on skin of color, right? And then the disease and severity level. Then we also dive deeper and talk about underlying health conditions that may be causing the skin ailment, and then also prescription effectiveness, right? So now the doctor has this holistic 360 view of you from an AI recommendation standpoint, and then they go and make that treatment plan and prescription for you and click a button, and then you have it on your mobile phone.
Ah, interesting. During this
Yeah.
time, as far as the patient's communication with the doctor, is it video? Is it phone? Is it email? Is it a combination of a variety of different forms?
Yeah, so it takes two forms. So we are a synchronous platform. So no live visits. Dermatology lends itself to that because it's a visual science. So
Hmm.
there's no appointments, none of that confusion. And then in terms of like follow-up care or triage care, you can do messaging with it all within the mobile app.
Oh, nice. So they download the app then,
Mhm.
and then from there they basically do everything.
You can do everything, and then we help you long term, right? So I know a lot of times when you have like a skin condition, you're like taking photos to make sure like are these products working, or you have notes on those products, or you may have your prescription and find out there's like a moisturizer or something you want to use, so you can pop back onto the platform and say, hey, like I found this new moisturizer, do you think it will work for me, is it going to cause problems with anything else? And then we'll be able to say, no, you're okay, you're good, you can move forward with that.
I love this. I don't know if my wife would be happy, but recently she was having a like white just and she was like I don't know what I'm using, or maybe it's something in the shower, or some new
Yeah,
facial cream, and then she stopped using something new she bought, but it would still come up here and there. But it's great that if she had that, she can just snap a picture or something and boom, hopefully they can give her some options and solutions to fix it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's the goal.
Yeah, and now I think she used something else, and it's going good for her.
Awesome.
Yeah, but that's great that you have that. It's just much easier and convenient for someone.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's good. What would you say, Sheena, drives and motivates you today?
It's probably just going back to the advocacy part. Like I've always been someone, um I would say I had like a big mouth. I was just never I was that child, student, employee that was never shy of like expressing my opinion on the direction in which we should go. Right? Like for
Yeah.
myself, for the team, for the company. And so for me, it was like advocacy is really important, especially in healthcare, because we're always telling individuals to advocate for yourself, advocate for yourself. But when you're already afraid, frustrated, in pain, it's hard for you to like fight a doctor every day or a nurse or someone else. So I want to create a platform, a company where people know that we're advocating for you by creating this product for you, I should say, but also advocating for you in terms of policy and how we're moving the industry forward.
So you're also working on the policy side of things.
Yeah, so that's just innate to me, right? Because
Sure.
that's what I did for 20 years. Like you work inside of a big Fortune 50 company, you have the policy and you have the business and you see how they interlock and work together. So that's essentially what I've built Kept Health to be. Admittedly, I didn't go into it thinking that way. It just kind of happened because I just knew the pieces work together.
On the policy side of Kept Health, I guess what's going on there? Like how is it change or
Yeah.
what? Yeah.
So there's two advocacy messages or policy issues. One is increasing um, access to grant funding for female health tech founders, which is dismal. And so I do a lot of like testimony and things on that nature, but also increasing health equity when it comes to AI development and clinical trials and research, right? Like, how do we improve that? So it's directly aligned to what our product will be and our services are.
Oh, that's great. I know when you started the company you were mentioning earlier, you wore basically all the hats. You were doing everything. I'm sure it probably looks different now. How has it evolved? How does your team look now compared to before?
Well, it still kind of feels like that because we're still a small team. So there's myself. I have a chief scientific officer, a chief medical officer, and then I have someone that does partnerships. And then we have our two tech folks. So, and we have different consultants and contractors
Sure.
um, available to us as well. And I guess for me, again, I think this is my political policy background coming into play, is that I don't envision Kept Health having like this 200, 300 person team. Like I'm used to like these small, nimble teams that can pull people in. So I think that's probably impacted why my team is being built the way it is.
That's good. Making sure
Yeah.
you have the right people in the right places.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And plus, when you start getting investment in, right, and you're like looking at the cash flow projections, you're like, okay, I don't see the benefit in spending $2 million at this stage just on salaries, right? It's
Hmm.
like it's a give and take. So
Yeah. Now that you're mentioning that, how are most of the people finding you? I mean, as far as any marketing efforts, how are you going about doing that?
yeah. So for the past couple of years, we've been doing a lot of research. So we've been in a closed beta. So we had several thousands of women, hundreds of dermatologists working with us. And so a lot of folks find us through like word of mouth, whether I do a speaking engagement or one of the doctors on my team is speaking, or women's organizations that I go to. So that's where we got a lot of our early customers from. However, at the end of this year, we're going to be launching the first phase of our marketing. So it's going to be like an advocacy awareness campaign to pull people in, and then we'll start more traditional marketing, right?
And you think that'll be later this year or next year?
So the goal is October, right?
Ah, okay.
That's the goal.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what everyone's working towards.
That's
For sure.
great. Having the business now for several years, and I know you have the experience, whether family yourself in different businesses also prior. What advice, would you give to someone if they came to you and said, "Hey, I want to open my own business, whatever it may be, maybe it's health, maybe it's not in cosmetics or anything else." Any pointers or suggestions, Sheena, you would give to that person?
Yeah, I would say one, to just do it, right? Like just start small steps, do it. And then do a lot of research. Like do like research on the market and then research with customers. That's really, really important because at the end of the day, whether you receive a bank loan or whether you receive venture capital, like your customers are going to be the ones who are truly going to validate whether you have something or not. So that's really, really important. And then the other thing I would say is I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers, but not focus so much on having mentors and like advisors upon advisors, but get someone who can help you with business strategy because that's going to be most important, right? And how you have that business CEO mindset that if I have to pivot, if I have to shift, I have to put something on hold, like that's going to be most important than just meeting with someone every week for an hour to say something you could have found on YouTube.
Hmm. No, that's great advice. How did you go about finding that business advisors or advisor? I'm not sure if you have more than one to help you with that side of things.
Yeah, so I will admit in the startup world, that's been a little bit challenging for me.
Hmm.
However, once I was able to find two really great angel investors, one that I actually used to work with at Walgreens, he's a former like C-suite executive, so he's been able to help me a lot, right? Like pinpointing me in that direction. So that's been beneficial for myself.
Hmm. I love that how, you never know where you can find help or advice. And I'm sure when you were working in Walgreens for that time, you never thought about the C-suite executive ever even being an investor in any company you would have one day, right?
At all. And we just randomly reconnected. So the other angel investor, he had a group of his friends and he was like, hey, I want you to come meet, do a presentation. So then after doing my presentation, the angel investor was like, hey, Sheena. I'm like, wonderful. So I'm like, I'm gonna get that. So and I so that was pretty cool.
I love that. It just shows how important it is to just have always good relationships with people because you never know what can happen.
Yeah, like have good relationships. And I'm a big proponent of being yourself, right? So people get to know who you are, right? I feel like, yes, I had this experience, those hard core skills, but he knew me as a person to say, oh, this is Sheena. Yeah, 3 days later, like I'm in, right? Because he knew me as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you work back then when you were in corporate with Walgreens a lot with any of these individuals that ended up investing in your company?
Yeah, I did, right.
Oh, you
And
did?
that was
Okay.
like the benefit of, I would say, working in government relations. Like you kind of get spoiled versus your other like employees, right? Because you're working with your senior executives of the company, right? So it's a different experience. You're building different relationships. So now when you move on onto different, aspects of your career, like you still keep running into these folks, right? So say for example, I'm speaking at a virtual first summit conference and there's former colleagues of mine from Walgreens, CVS that I'll be speaking with just in a different capacity.
Now, this is totally off subject, but it just reminds me of a conversation I was having with my wife as far as, being close to some people in the C-suite and how you don't see that. I mean, there's been a lot of progress as far as with women in the C-suite or close to it, but
Mhm.
you still don't see it. My wife, and I'm mentioning my wife recently was having a dinner with people in the C-suite, and she was the only woman there.
Mhm.
And now that you're mentioning this comment, I'm like, I'm just so happy to hear that it's getting better, but maybe obviously not where it should be.
Yeah, I think it's two things, right? It's like increasing the representation of having women on the board, right? And
Hmm.
having minorities like in the C-suite and other high level positions. But it's also the mindset of the men that are there, right? Like I think that's where like you're gonna see the most change, um,
Hmm.
impactful change is like them seeing someone not saying like, oh, I'll use myself, not your wife, not like she's just not a woman. Like this is a person that has characteristics that remind me of myself, right? Like she is a go-getter, right? Like I
Hmm.
could be around her, I could trust her. Like she's gonna keep me informed, she's making decisions, she's putting wins on the board, right? It's that type of mindset, not seeing me like, oh, she's a woman, is she gonna get pregnant? Is she not gonna like all these different things, right? So it's the mindset of the men that I think.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's just about what do they do, the production. Forget whatever sex it is, yeah,
Exactly.
that's irrelevant. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
And
Sheena, are there any habits or traits you feel that you have that have helped you whether for the business, on the business side of things, or just personally?
Yeah, I would say, in addition to me just being vocal, right? Like there's
Of
probably
course,
one
yes, you
stories
have
I can give you
mentioned
about that.
that.
Vocal, being empathetic, right? Like I think, as well as being direct. So I know a lot of people don't put those two together, but I am direct, right? But I use my empathy to empathize with other people, or I should say, put myself in that other person's shoes, right? Because when that person is on your team, talking to you, they want to make sure they feel everybody wants to feel valued, right? Like they're bringing something to the table, like they're being heard, right? And not just being heard, but you as an employee, you want to see your ideas come to life, right? So like that to me is something that I learned over the course of time. So all three of those together, I think, I would definitely not want to trade those in.
Okay, that's great. I love that. What would you say is your biggest challenge today with your role at Capt Health?
Um, there's so many, Otto. Like, do you want like intensity level? Let's say, right now it is definitely all about building our data system, and to train our machine algorithms, excuse me. That's a high pressure point for me. Um,
Hmm.
and then always as an early stage company, cash flow, right? Whether that's coming from investors or partners. And then making sure, this is more a personal one, making sure that I'm building the right team. Like that's really important to me.
That's it's a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah. And for this, Sheena, do you have, besides the sort of business advisors you mentioned earlier, that is that who you go to where you sort of want to just bounce things off people?
Yeah, so I have two sets, right?
Okay.
So I have that set where I bounce ideas off of. They know me, but then I have this other group where it's like frustration lets loose, venting lets loose, right? And you can get down and dirty and then
Uh-huh.
come up with some air and then be like, okay, I think I figured it out. Now I'm gonna go to this group and figure out what they have to say. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the first group where you sort of go all out, is that like close friends or
So some of them are, they're not close friends, right?
okay.
Like I think my close friends are like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, can we just go have margaritas? Like no one cares about that, right? But like they are business friends that I met along the way. So I have
Okay.
a really great friend from my former life as a lobbyist, and I have another great friend that I met through the startup world. And so I'm able to go to them and just let it all loose, and they kind of understand where I'm going. So that's really helpful.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. What do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
Um, there is no linear path. Like it's gonna be crazy, right? You how you see all those memes where it's like this is the path of success. I
Hmm.
agree with that, but I feel like there's big like blockers in the way, right? And like gaps and valleys that you go in. And I don't think people explain those valleys enough, right? Like we always talk about the successes, or we even talk about failures like successes, right? But not the
Hmm.
valleys that no one talks about. That's wish I would have known there's going to be a lot of valleys, like a lot.
I like that you're mentioning this, Sheena. Now going into the valleys, and that's typical in entrepreneurship in any business. That just is part of the territory. That's why many, unfortunately, don't make it. Or after, I forgot what the statistics, I think after 5 years, I don't know, over 80, 90% are not in existence anymore. What would you say? I don't want to say favorite fail, but maybe favorite setback that you've had that was big and what you learned from that.
Yeah. So interesting enough, it would be failure to raise the amount of capital that I wanted to raise at a particular point, right? So
Okay.
because I wasn't able to raise that full round of funding that I wanted, we had to go back and think very differently about how we were going to make our company a success, right? And it was me saying, okay, I have to take off this cute founder hat and I had to put on a CEO hat and get really purposeful. Like, how am I going to build a company that doesn't rely on venture capital? What is going to make us a success? And I had to like refocus, reprogram. Okay, we're not going to launch just full Facebook, Twitter ads. That's because that's what everybody does. But let's
Mhm.
pull back. What's unique to us? And how can we capture our market better than anybody else, and then get something out there so then we can get our customers, and then the venture capital will come.
I like that. So you have to sort of like regroup and strategize and think about how can we sort of almost bootstrap it without the capital, right?
Yeah, so I would say it's deeper than bootstrapping, right?
Okay.
I think you have to like change your mindset from what you're told as a founder, and you have to think of it as, okay, what if I already have this company, but my company is failing? Like, how am I going to save my company? Right? Like, if I had shareholders, if I had press just waiting to pound us into the ground, like, how am I going to think fundamentally different about what I'm building, even if that goes against different suggestions or rules of the startup world?
Sure. You were just mentioning before about maybe advertising or social media,
Yeah.
and not getting the capital needed to do, or I guess go that route, right? So after this experience, after this event, what did you do next as far as then strategizing and doing, taking things in a different direction going
Yeah.
forward?
So I went back to what I knew best, partnerships. Like, that's it. So I started going through my little Rolodex and pulling hats out my back pocket. And I'm like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what I need. And then people started to come on board and started looking at pilot projects with different corporations, which are difficult to get. But once
Yeah.
we got our first one, it was a lot easier to get the door open to get others as well. So it was less of venture capital, even I would say less of trying to get my product out there to get that type of revenue. It's like, how do I get these strategic partnerships and these strategic pilots to get me my product and get me non-dilutive funding?
Okay. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
When you hear the word success, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
The Bahamas. Like, that's my happy place. Like, success would be that, at any moment in time, I'm at a position where I could just pick up and go to the Bahamas for like a week and bring friends and family and anybody else who wants to come. That's success to me.
You like the Bahamas a lot?
I love the Bahamas. Like, I
When was the last
feel
time you
like
were,
that's where I'm supposed to be.
when was the last time you were down
Or
there?
it's been like 4 years.
Okay.
It's right before COVID.
Sure, sure. I understand. Maybe it's
Yeah.
about time to go visit down
It
there
is
again.
definitely time. It is definitely time. I hear, the spirits, calling me.
Okay.
For sure.
Coming to an end here soon, Sheena. What are you most excited about? What does the future look like for you and Kept Health?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about a lot of the partnerships that we have lined up in our advocacy campaign. I'm excited about that because it's not just about my company being profitable, right? And it's not just about me getting the right customers onboarded and onto my platform. It's about how do we engage the everyday consumer and understanding equity, like equity in terms of research, the terms of the prescriptions that you're getting, how effective they are, and how you can have a role in that. So I'm excited about that.
That's good. Is there something I didn't ask that I should have asked?
Um, no, I think you did. I think you're good. I think you're I
Okay.
really like the fact that you didn't ask me about raising money. That's number one.
Okay.
And two, like my experience as a woman. Like, I really appreciate that.
Of course. Of course. When you're not busy, obviously running the business, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
Yeah, so I finally started getting back to like free time where I can shut my mind off. So again, I love reading, right? Like, that's my goal too. I also have started getting into collecting like vintage items, just like random things. And then also I've taken this year to travel a lot, but in the US, things that I used to do as a little girl. So kind of reconnecting with the youthful side of Sheena, right? So I'll be going to I went to a powwow. So we used to do that a lot growing up. We used to go to Oklahoma. So we would go to powwows or just like going hiking, being a Colorado girl. So those types of things.
So this year, where have you traveled? Did you go back to Oklahoma or
Hmm.
Colorado? Where
Yep,
have you
I
gone
definitely
so
went back
far?
to Colorado. So majority of my family still lives there.
Okay.
So Oklahoma, um, yeah, and then I have some other places this summer. So I'll be going to California because we used to go to California like every um summer. We would go to
Yeah.
Fresno, which anyway, but it's different. It's different now. Fresno is totally different.
Yeah.
And then
You have
I'll be
family there?
no, but it was
Oh,
just like all about where I used to go with like my grandpa or my
yeah.
grandma. So like things like that. Yeah.
You're mentioning you just started collecting vintage stuff. Is there like any specific items or products that you like to look out for?
Yeah, so like when I first started, I was all like into like gym shoes, right? Like Nikes and like Pumas. But then I was like, nah, everybody does that. So now like I like to collect HBCU like paraphernalia, like jackets,
Hmm.
t-shirts. I like that. I like collecting like pictures, like glass pictures and
Okay.
vases. So I like to go to like different little random vintage shops. Yeah.
Do you sort of like flip them? Is it like a business thing too, or is it just
No,
like
it's
collecting and
not.
keeping it?
Collecting it and keeping it.
Okay.
Then I'm slowly getting into art. So my grandma's really into like art. So now I'm slowly getting back into that.
Nice. Nice. Sheena,
Yeah.
if people want to learn more about you and Kept Health, where can they go to find out more information, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Super easy. You can visit us at kept.health. And then on Instagram, Twitter, all the social channels is at kept health.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. It was fun.
It was fun. Thanks, Otto.
Of course. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.